The first question we had for you was, when did you decide you want to become a game designer?
Actually, to be honest, it was about 2-3 years ago. It would have been something that I probably should have thought about much earlier in my life. But like, I'm 31 this year, so back when I was 14, 15, it just wasn't possible. You wouldn't have actually believed you could be a game designer, certainly not in Ireland. So it was about 3 years ago, my wife was like, you know what you really want to do? Because I was in this kind of weird situation where I just didn't know what to do with my life. And she was like, you just need to go and pursue this dream that seems stupid and impossible, but it can be a reality if you put your work into it. And so that's what I did. And so signed up to study in Pulse College, and here I am 3 years later.
Cool. The next question was actually going to be asked, what inspired you to push you that? Would you say it was your wife? Or?
Well, I think she was a huge catalyst to something. Like, I mean, I read that one as well. Like, inspiration is a bit... Like, I would have been inspired by games that I would have played back when I was a teenager, and even more recently, I'm quite a big hobbyist in the board game, in the designer board game kind of niche area. So I own hundreds of board games. I love board games, and I would have got into that hobby maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And so from there, I realized at the very least it's possible to become a designer in that way. So it led me to do a lot more. Like, I got the job for the amount of work I've done on a very kind of personal, like, hobby level, you know, that way. So I switched roles from being a graphic designer to a game designer because the amount of stuff I did on my own time shone through. And that came, I think, mostly not just from my wife, but also from my love for board games, because it got me to do stuff outside of work, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. I'd say having a passion for it does actually help then, yeah? Would you say that?
Well, I think you need a passion if you're going to work in this industry.
Makes sense.
So, you know, I put a lot of work into it, but I was really lucky that everything kind of, you know, the stars aligned and everything came into place that I got the job.
Speaking of your workload, what's your typical day-to-day workload for you?
It can change dramatically. Dramatically? It can change dramatically. My role is quite flexible, Larian, so I'm a game designer, but I work with the writing team. Specifically, like, there's two forms of game design, generally speaking. One is more a math element of it, the other is more story. And obviously there's loads in between, but that's kind of the general leanings. And so I would lean more towards story. I work with the writing team. And I bring the graphic design skills with me. So occasionally I'll help out our social media guy who sits beside me with some graphics for the Twitter account and stuff. So most of the stuff you see on Twitter or the Kickstarter artwork, not the concept actual drawn art, but all the graphic design, that would have been me. So I'm doing little bits and pieces, but most of the time the day-to-day stuff is currently pre-production. It's about story. It's about making sure that we've got the main plots ironed out and we know what the players are going to go through.
And lastly, any words of wisdom for aspiring game designers?
It's such a tricky one in Ireland, because my heart goes out to the amount of people that do their best and they still don't get anywhere, or they don't get any funding, or they do it all for free for the rest of their lives. I think when I started out 3 years ago, my wife said, you need to do this. It wasn't so that we make buckets of money. It was so that I would fulfill a part of me that needed to be fulfilled, if that makes sense. So if I was working a full-time job now that wasn't in game design, I would still be making games. Like, even now I'm working on a board game. In fact, I'm going to prototype on Friday. Nothing to do with Larian Studios. And it's just something in me that I keep wanting to design stuff. So it's what I would be doing. So obviously you need to be that motivated and just doing it, not just getting a job in it. It can't be just a cool thing. And the only thing I could recommend, it has to be a passion. Like that. And the thing is, it is a passion for so many people that still don't make it. So it has to be a passion, because if it is your passion, then if you don't make it, I believe it's still fulfilling. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But if I had one piece of advice, it's that you just keep, you do stuff that's fun for you, that's potentially useful for you, and also focus. Like, in the indie scene these days, it's so easy to do bits of everything, and I think that's good, but I also think that you need to be focused on specific skill sets, because if you ever do get a job and get hired, it'll be for a specific skill set.